This is part 12 of the Craftsman 6x48 Belt Disc Sander Rebuild Series. If you haven't seen part 11, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we will be fabricating the belt guard. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. So when we left off in part 11, I was kind of giving you an idea of where we're heading with this, and this is the plan. So I'm holding in my right hand the mount for the belt guard, and on the left is the belt guard itself. So I had said that I had already fabricated the mount for the fabricated belt guard. I turned this rod in my lathe and then threaded the end of it. And it's the same diameter and length as the original, minus the threads. And then this was just a piece of angled steel that I'm using as the mount itself. We're just going to put a washer on the rod, put it inside the angle, and then add another washer and a nut. And then when tightened down appropriately, that should replicate the same dimensions, roughly, of the mount. And it's going to be under the belt guard, so it's not really going to be seen anyways. So that's the mount, and next we've got to figure out how we're going to fabricate the belt guard. In part 11, I think I said I was using 16 gauge. I actually think it's 18 gauge. And this is sheet metal zinc plated. But any sheet metal would have worked. I'm just going to take some basic measurements to get an idea of how I'm going to do this. And I don't think I'm going to do a full 2 inches deep. I think we're going to go about 1 inch deep on the walls. And then the center section is 3 1/4, something like that. So getting some basic dimensions there, and then I'm going to use some masking tape and then find that center and center punch it. And then these are what's called Dremel points, and it's like a big compass to be able to draw angles, which I could have just used a compass, but at the time I was thinking that I wanted to have it slightly offset, which is what you would use the Dremel points better for. In any case, we go over to the bandsaw and we start cutting this out. Now, had I really been thinking about this, because I'm kind of making this up as I went along, I would have left some little tabs on the rounded section there. But I didn't. And that would have made that rounded end go together a little bit better than how it turned out. But I'm still happy with how it turned out. And this is why I think it was 18 gauge instead of 16 gauge, because I'm able to cut it with some metal shears, which if you don't have a bandsaw set up like that, you could just cut it with the metal shears. Then we take it over to my belt disc sander and clean up those edges. And then my 1 inch belt disc sander. And we're going to bend that angle there just so we can get in there and clean up that little V section between the one leg there. Alright, so, and I'm sure you've noticed that I did not cut that 1 inch section that's 6 or 7 inches long off. And that's because we're going to wrap it around. So we're just going to do a little bit of light sanding and filing to get all of these edges down and remove any burrs. Now you could do this with sheet aluminum as well. It's just I had this laying around, so. And as you can tell, it's not super rigid, but once we put some bends in this metal, it'll become more rigid. So here I'm just trying to come up with an idea of where the holes are going to need to be. And that top hole is the main hole that we need to drill first. So we'll go ahead and drill that out. And this is just a step bit. Because for stuff like this, spade bits are not my friend. So once we got that hole drilled, then we're going to score our bend lines. And I'm just using a screwdriver to score them. And that'll help that bend be more accurate. I'm going to transfer the bend lines to the back side or the outside. And we're just going to use some metal as a straight edge on the bottom and top of it and crank all that down with some clamps and then bend it with a mallet. Do the same thing for the other end or the other side, but we got to remove that tape now because it's going to be kind of tight corners once we get it bent. This is actually called breaking, but bending makes sense to everybody that's not used to working with metal. Now that we've got kind of a U-shaped channel and the bend lines are real nice and crisp, that's going to work for us. So here we're going to bend the end around. So we left this leg on there, and this is why I said if we'd had a little tab near the top of that bend, we could have tucked that tab in and it would have helped everything line up a little better, but no big deal. So I'm just going to use a pair of vice grips with some electrical tape on them to keep it from marring everything, and we're going to center punch and drill, and then we're going to rivet that. I'm just using pop rivets. We'll end up putting 2 of them in there. And this is just a cheap Harbor Freight pop rivet gun. But it gets the job done, so. Boom. We'll take it back over to the belt disc sander and clean it up a little bit. And then we're going to round the edges down at the bottom. Yeah. And we'll clean all that back up again with the sanding sponge and a file. So yes, it's not going to be as nice as the original, but it will be functional and it will look okay. So I realized that I don't want all those hole markings on the inside, so I went ahead and removed them with some acetone and then came back and cut a piece of cardboard the width of the inside width, I guess, and then drew some center lines on it and used that as a guide to figure out the center and where I want to put these holes. So we've got 3 holes we've got to drill. This big hole that's going to allow the bolt head or the nut from the mount to punch through, and then the 2 smaller holes are for how we're mounting it to the mount. That's a mouthful. So we center drill or drill out that center hole. Move all this around and then drill the other 2 holes. Again, I had kind of a rough plan. I mean, I'm figuring all this out as I go along, which is how I do most of the fabricating I do. Just an idea and then figure out how I'm going to do it. Of course, as we said in previous videos, the downside to that is there's a better way to do a lot of this stuff, and it's not until after the fact that I can sit there and think, well, hell, we could have done it that way and it would have been so much easier. But no big deal. So now we're going to clean up these holes with this file. We're just going to remove burrs and whatnot. I haven't really given you guys any measurements for this video because, like I said, all this was kind of being done off the cuff. But if you really want measurements, then put it in the comments and I'll pull measurements. Off of all of it. But if you just eyeball and figure it out yourself as you're working on it, also think that's a little bit more fun in the long run because you're not trying to just do what I did, you're doing your own thing. So here we're going to test fit it, and we go ahead and mount up the mounting bracket. It's got a screw that screws into the top mount of the pedestal base. We can just tighten that down. It's kind of hard to get in there. Now this is assuming that I'm running a 36-inch or a 38-inch belt. I can't remember which, and I'll know for sure by the time we get to the assembly video. But if you have a longer belt, the problem is the belt guard is not going to line up because the mount can only be mounted in one spot. So next we're just going to mount the belt guard to the belt guard mounting bracket. I'm trying to center the drive shaft on that top hole and make sure that the belt guard is not going to rub the belt. And we'll test it, turn it on, and see if the belt guard rubs it. And it seems to be running perfectly. And that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. I think in the next video we're going to get to masking and painting. So as always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.